folks, and welcome to another episode of Podcraft. This is the show all about running a successful podcast. I'm Colin Gray from thepodcasthost.com, joined by Matthew. As always, how are you getting on, Matthew?
Yeah, good, Colin. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, actually. Good week so far. We're in the middle of the week, getting through. How about you?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of the week too.
That wasn't what I was asking, but hey, that's a nice confirmation. I like that.
Yeah. Yep. It's the same day for me as it is for you, Colin.
Same day. What are you saying? You haven't conquered time travel yet? That's absolutely outrageous, Matthew. No. That's been on your to-do list for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Right, what are we doing this week? Trailers. Let's get into trailers. So what are we digging into today around trailers?
Yeah, trailers. I think it's a missed opportunity for some podcasters when they don't have trailers. So yeah, we're going to get into what is a trailer, answer that ostensibly obvious question, I guess, and how to make a good one and what you can do with it. So
yeah. Big thing being what makes a great trailer and where you can put it as well. We're going to dig into where you might use that trailer, where you can publish it, lots of different ways you can use that trailer to try and grow your audience as well, aren't we?
Yeah, I guess a good starting point here then is the purpose of a podcast trailer. It makes me think of, do you remember when you went to Asda's or that with your mum when you were wee, you would get free samples. There'd be the plate of cheese. It was take one. But when you're wee, you're
taster.
How many could I get away with here? You know, wee chicken skewers or that, you take maybe 6 or 7 before the woman gave you a bad look. So,
all on a wee cocktail stick, Just keep popping them in your mouth, for sure.
So are they wee tasters? Are they tiny little metaphorical podcast trailers?
For the cheese. That's a cheese trailer. Yeah, cheese trailer on a stick. Yes.
A knee-down trailer.
Yeah, but I mean, so the point, okay, so to continue your metaphor, you want to deliver a little bite-sized morsel of your podcast that people can consume in 30 to 60 seconds or so, that really tells people, I like this. It tells them what the show's all about so that they taste it, they pop it in their mouth and they go, yeah, I want to get more of this. I want to get the full block. There we go, Matthew. Was that good enough?
I like it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, my definition of a trailer is a succinct and compelling taster to hook or win over new listeners.
Yeah, definitely. What about I mentioned that kind of length question there. Do you think that's about right? Is that sort of 30 seconds to a minute, or do you get longer ones? Do you get shorter ones? Which one's better? 30 seconds, 1 minute? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard them go longer than a minute. I suppose like any other content, it depends how engaging or interesting it is. But 30 seconds seems to be quite a common length for podcast trailers, and it is a tight time frame to work within, especially when we get into all the things you maybe want to have in there. What about in your experience?
Yeah, you can do very little with 30 seconds, can't you? Or you can fit, well, that's not true. You can do a lot with 30 seconds actually, but you've got a really brief window of time to fit it into. So it needs to be quite a small amount of words for sure. I mean, I think the ones that get shared on podcasts tend to be quite short that way, don't they? 30 seconds, maybe go up to 1 minute. But there's different uses. So we'll talk about a bunch of different uses later. But one can be having your own trailer on your own feed, can't you? And I think with that one, for sure, you can get away with a bit longer, even up to a couple of minutes, giving a really good intro to your show. So I think there's different use cases for a trailer where you can get away with a longer period of time. What was our data, Matthew, in the discoverability survey? Nearly everyone would give you at least, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
It's kind of the threshold, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So there's very few listeners would give you less than 5 minutes to hook them into a show. So technically, that means if it's on your own feed, if they've found you there, they're intrigued enough to play your trailer, and we can talk about how you actually put that onto your feed a bit later. But technically, if you're there, you might be able to get away with 2, 3, 4, even 5 minutes with the trailer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for sharing elsewhere, you're down to a minute max, aren't you? Maybe even 30 seconds.
So what are the essential components that we want to include in a podcast trailer then?
Four things really, isn't it? We've got podcast name, we've got description, target audience, we've got a call to action, and we've got a great URL. I think that's the kind of four core things that we always talk about, isn't it? So should we dig into them? Podcast name's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Just at least have the name of your show in the trailer clearly stated at the start. What about description though? Like description and target audience, like how do you get something in there that really concisely explains what the show's about, so you're not describing it sentences and sentences, and who it's for? Like, do you have any kind of approaches to that?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of awkward and clunky and time consuming if you got into it where, our target audience is men in their 50s who, live here, and so it's more about the posing a question, isn't it? Like, if you're asking, like, are you somebody who struggles with this, then, join us on the whatever podcast, or like, have you ever wondered about, well, that's a topic that we cover regularly on the whatever show. So it's like, yeah, that question solution pairing, that you could maybe frame it that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Or you've got kind of formats like, have you ever wondered about, or what about, well, these are just two of the topics you'll find us discussion each week on this podcast. So any way that you can kind of phrase it as a question is really cool. Because that's the question that they'll have in their mind, isn't it? Like if you're trying to reach somebody, you're trying to trigger something in their brain, you're really wanting to solve a problem for them. Often it's a problem that's kind of front of mind. So if you can actually say that question that's already in the front of their mind, that's the thing that triggers an instant response. And they're like, oh, that's definitely for me. And then the next bit's the call to action, isn't it? Like you want to ask people to actually do something. But again, you've only got 30 seconds or 1 minute. So what can you actually ask somebody to do in that time, Matthew? What's the most important thing, do you think, for a podcast trailer?
Yeah, do you reckon it just is get them on your website, like have a decent domain name, whether that points to your own site or just, a pod link site or a Raphonic page or a Podchaser page, and yeah, just a URL. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah, I like that. That's what I would tend to do, but like we know that's kind of not the most common just now, is it? Like the most common you hear out there is like just search my podcast on wherever you get your podcast. That's the most common, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah.
Like what do you think's the difference?
I suppose it depends. Again, based on like the use cases of podcast trailers, you would imagine that in fact, all of the people that hear are going to be podcast listeners. There might be the odd exception where somebody's landed on your site and they find it embedded there. But yeah, most podcast listeners, they know how to find podcasts, or all podcast listeners do, don't they? So they're just going to search for it if they're interested. Maybe I'm just old school with the domain name. I don't know if it's just that because I'm a relic.
No, I totally think you're right. Like that's what I would like to do. That's what I would prefer to do, is to send people to your website, because you just have so much more control over it there. Like you can put on a bit of artwork, you put on your header, you can put on your description in the right place. I mean, you can get all that stuff in a podcast listening app as well, to be fair, if you get them to just search the name. But I mean, if you've got just a really memorable URL, like mypodcast.com, whatever it is, if you have a really memorable one, then that's surely quicker, more direct, because they get straight to the page. There's no kind of browsing through. There's no distraction seeing like other podcasts. Because generally, if you search your podcast name, you'll see your competitors.
Yeah.
Because that's generally how podcast search works. Like, because you'll no doubt have something related to your topic in your title. Even if you don't, like the podcast listing apps have, algorithms that show up, here's some related stuff. So usually you're showing competitors. So not that we're like heavily competitive in the podcast space, but if you can send them straight to your website, there's better. I think it's just you'd more directly have control over what they see as soon as they arrive there. You can even have things like mailing lists, stuff like that, to try and get them on your email. You can get them to play something right away there, and you can send them towards like whatever listening app that they prefer, using a lot of those kind of more redirecting. You can have those buttons that send you to a page which actually is intelligent. It actually shows you links to the podcast app that's relevant to your platform. So yeah, I don't know. I just like it better. But
as a listener, though, like if you were listening to a podcast and you heard a compelling trailer for another show, like what? Even if they read out a URL, would you not just in the app you were listening in? Would you not just go and look for it?
Probably, yeah, probably. So yeah, there's an argument for both, I think. Yeah. I think probably the easiest and simplest, most straightforward is just search your name in podcast listening apps of your choice, whatever it is. But yeah, I'll hang on to the website just because it's more effective overall.
Yeah. I mean, again, like we're maybe over-egging this a bit, but like if you've already said the podcast name, you probably don't need to tell them to get where they get their podcast because they would know that anyway. So yeah, maybe we're just overthinking this. But then that is the job of this episode, isn't it? To overthink podcast trailers.
and also, yeah, I mean, you do have to give that call to action. Like, people do need that prompt. Like, they'll listen to it, they'll have heard the name, but they'll probably have forgotten it 30 seconds later.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're like on the go, you're busy, you're thinking about stuff, you're like, oh, that does sound quite cool. And it does literally take you saying, now go and search for blah on your podcast listening tool of choice. Like, there's so much data that shows that. Like, you do actually have to make it really clear what people should do next. So yeah, I think it does help.
On the subject of calls to action, Colin, do we have one ourselves on this episode?
Oh, we do. Thank you. Good prompt, Matthew. Our podcast survey. So we are running a survey right now for Podcraft. We'd love to get your input. The whole point is to try and make Podcraft better for you, our listeners. So if you do enjoy what we do, and if you don't enjoy parts of what we do, get on that survey and tell us. Please do tell us like what we do well, what we don't do well, what you'd like to change, what you'd like to do more of, what topics you'd like to hear more of in future. You can find that over at thepodcasthost.com/survey. That's thepodcasthost.com/survey. It doesn't take long to fill out, and it really will help us make a better show for you. Plus, Matthew, there's a prize, isn't there?
There sure is, and I'm scrambling in the recesses of my brain to try and remember what it is. There's some sort of prize or reward or that you might win.
The well-prepared podcaster.
You probably won't win it anyway. Although, given the current numbers, you might. Really need folks to step up here. I think we've got 11 in that. Really appreciate those, but come on.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's hundreds of you that aren't filling this out.
Do.
Why?
It's a $100 voucher, so you can get one. Stand a chance. Yeah, right now those 11 people have a 1 in 11 chance of winning $100.
Tell you what, I'm going to fill it out and I'm going to win it. I'm going to fix the draw.
Yeah,
so
totally.
There you go.
Plus, added bonus, we said on the first week we are going to do some data around this. So we're going to see when the biggest spike of responses is. So I always say like 3 episodes, I think, is when you get the biggest response. So prove me right. Go and respond after this one. This is the 3rd episode. And tell me whether that works or not. Skewing the data there, Matthew.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Tone, personality. This is the next section. How do we get... Like, how do we show what the show's about? Like, how do we show who we are, who we're about, why our show's great to listen to in just 30 seconds, 60 seconds? Can you get across that kind of tone in that amount of time?
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? Like, especially if you're going for the 30-second trailer. You know, maybe your show has a bit of humour and you want to try and show that in the trailer. So there's that tightrope between like trying to get that in but it not being too forced or jarring. But yeah, you need to go beyond that. Like, this is just purely information, isn't it? Increasingly in a world of AI content, like, information is so readily accessible. And as we've talked about in recent weeks, a big strength of podcasting is the personality that delivers that information along with, you know, the other content that the podcast brings. So yeah, I mean, any thoughts on that for like just getting that tone and personality into such a small period of time?
Yeah, I actually, some of the best trailers out there tend to take a kind of montage approach, I think, don't they? Like bringing in clips from elsewhere. You get some that are great in terms of just sort of being in the, maybe it's 2 co-hosts and they can go back and forth and they can show a bit of that chemistry that you get between the co-hosts, and you can do a little scripted thing that shows your personality. But especially if you're an interview show or a solo show particularly, maybe you need like more of a kind of something quite dynamic, and like taking some of the best clips from previous episodes and showing like what kind of information, what kind of entertainment, what kind of inspiration you get on your show. I don't know. Have you ever done a montage type trailer where you bring in clips from other shows?
Yeah, I'd imagine I probably have in the past. So that would go longer than the 30 seconds, wouldn't it? Like you would give yourself a bit more room there, presumably.
Well, I've heard short runs. I've heard within 30 seconds you're possibly struggling a bit. But I mean, a couple of sentences intro at the start, 2 or 3 clips, which are 5 or 10 seconds long. That takes up the 30, doesn't it? But I think the 60, like if you're going for a minute, I think you can include these. And it depends, like they have to be really tight, really kind of purposeful. But yeah, it's tricky. You're absolutely right. Like it's hard to find that. So yeah, but I think that can be a way to get it across because you can show the actual conversations. It's less. That's the trouble, isn't it, with trailers? Like often they're a bit stilted because they don't really showcase what the podcast is about in many ways because it is literally just you reading out a script. And when are we ever actually just reading out a script on a podcast? It's pretty rare. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a way I think of getting across more of what the real actual live podcast is like.
I thought it would be good to use a real world example here. So I dug out the old Hostile World trailer. I thought we could play that and just talk a wee bit about it.
Oh yeah, cool. Go for it.
Welcome to Kraken Mare, the biggest liquid hydrocarbon ocean on Saturn's moon, Titan.
And this is just one of the places you get to visit and learn about when you listen to the Hostile Worlds podcast.
The Hostile Worlds podcast, which is, of course, a science-based audio drama documentary series that teaches you all about our universe in a fun and entertaining way.
Head on over to hostileworlds.net to subscribe on your podcast app of choice.
So there you are, Colin. Do you miss Hostile Worlds?
I do. We talk about bringing this back all the time, don't we? It's like one of the most fun things, most rewarding things we ever made. Just happened to take days and days and days to make an episode, eh?
Yeah, a big old job to make that show. But who knows? We'll maybe get back on the horse at some point. In terms of that trailer then, like 30 seconds. So, I mean, it was a long time ago I made this, but we tried to bring in, first you've got the soundscape, so you could hear the kind of, the bubbling away that it's supposed to be the atmosphere of Titan. And straight away you've got Sarah cutting in there with like, welcome to Kraken Mare, the biggest liquid hydrocarbon ocean. So straight away we're setting a scene there, aren't we? We're putting the listener somewhere. So you're hoping at that point you've kind of grabbed their attention.
Yeah, and it shows what the show's like, doesn't it? It shows that that's what we're going to be doing, like going to the places and putting in soundscape, and it's highly produced. It shows the kind of high production of it. And then, so Sarah reiterates the name, doesn't she? The Hostile Worlds podcast. And actually just a really concise sentence on exactly what it's about. Puts it in a niche. Sometimes that can be a good thing, can't it? Like categories, I don't know, sometimes we struggle to fit into categories, but having a category really kind of helps helps people to identify with it. What was it? We audio drama. You called it a drama-mentary. You tried to introduce a new term for a while with this, didn't you? Drama-mentary.
Yeah, a drama-mentary. I don't think, in fact, I know for a fact that didn't take on.
Didn't catch off. It catch on.
Yeah, I mean, so like Sarah had set the scene there. She put us in a location, and then David came in to tell us that like this is just one of the places you get to visit when you listen to Hostile Worlds podcast. So the listener finds out what to expect, what they're going to get from the show. Sarah, like you're saying, she backs that up then. She touches on the fact that it's kind of an audio drama documentary show, and then it closes with David, he says, head on over to hostileworlds.net. So we've got the website in there to subscribe on your podcast app of choice. So not a million miles away from what we kind of talked about earlier there.
Yeah, perfect. Indeed. Yeah, the URL and subscribe on your podcast app of choice, potentially. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it was a good one. So yeah, we got plenty of subscribers. One of the best performance shows we ever created. So the trailer must have performed okay. Right, what next then? So we've introduced that tone, we've shown kind of what the show's about. So what about credibility? Like, is that something that's relevant to the show as well?
I think it definitely could be, depending on your background, or even, I don't think you need, like I've put down as examples here, if you've been a surgeon for 30 years and that's the topic of your podcast, that's a really impressive thing to put in, former weightlifting champion, ex-pro footballer, like, again, that'll catch your target audience's attention, but, you don't have to have these impressive credentials, do you? You could just be on this sort of like, I'm going to learn about these things, I'm going to speak to these people, but I'm not necessarily one myself. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. It's some of the best shows actually are those kind of learn with me, aren't they? Like where you have people interviewing experts or they're following along in the journey kind of thing. So yeah, but I think if it's relevant, yeah, for sure. Like you say, if you have that credibility, if you have those qualifications, if you have that experience, put it across. Like just say, I am blah, blah, blah. You can have one sentence that is, I've been podcasting for 15 years, teaching it for 10, and have created like 27 shows. So follow along as I teach you how to do the same, that kind of thing. Like it doesn't need to be kind of overblown. But yeah, a wee bit of showing off. Nothing wrong with that in a trailer, I think.
I'm a completely unknown podcaster who's been plugging away at this for 15 years.
That's it.
Listen to my
Barely
show.
known, Matthew. Famous in niches. All right. What about the publishing? Like, how do we get this out there? So once we've got our trailer, how do we actually make it work for us?
Yeah, the old way was before you had things like tagging and that in your hosting provider, you would just backdate it, wouldn't you? You would make it essentially your first episode, so that when you looked at a linear feed, it would appear at the very start. But now we've got kind of more sophisticated tools in a lot of hosting providers, don't we? Like we've got dedicated trailer tags, or, and they'll be picked up in Apple Podcasts or Spotify as well as trailers. Actually, on Spotify, have you ever seen in the Spotify portal, you can go in and like set a trailer in there? Have you seen that before?
Yeah, you can upload and you can make it video as well if you want to. So yeah, so definitely worthwhile, eh? And I love the fact that you can have like a couple of trailers in there even. So you can have ones which are maybe a 30-second, 1 minute intro, and then you can have another one which is maybe 3 minutes, which gives a better a sort of more in-depth intro as well. So you can let people choose what they want to use. What about on the website as well, Matthew? Like, do you like to put one on, your homepage, wherever people might find that podcast at that URL we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. Like if you've got your own website and like you're saying, a homepage and about page, like you'd be daft not to embed on there. If you're getting the odd person, drop them onto your website, they wonder what it's about, just hit them with that trailer straight away and make sure you've got the links under there to your, again, a pod.link page is really good for this, or a phonic page, Podchaser, whatever. So yeah, put it on your website for sure if you've got one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've often replaced the artwork actually with a trailer at the top on websites, because it's generally your trailer will be maybe an embedded player from your RSS feed from your host. So that'll include your artwork too, but it makes it more interactive. So you can see the artwork, you can see the title of the trailer, you've got the big play button there, maybe the description below as well. So yeah, that can be a nice way to put it in there. And of course, like social media as well, Matthew, not something we, love necessarily, but definitely works for some people. So if you can put your trailer, it's something that you can convert into video really simply too. For example, like just with Headliner or Wave with two V's, WAVVE, they can take a bit of audio and actually just put your artwork and a waveform on it as well. And then you can put it onto any of the social platforms too and actually share it out, get it played and shared out to everyone that's relevant to your audience.
What about because you get like dedicated trailer podcasts and resources. Like, have you ever listened to any of these shows in the past? Do you think they work?
No, I don't. I mean, if I'm searching for a podcast, I don't listen to a podcast about it for 20 minutes. Like I just go and search for a topic, really. Occasionally I'll go through the highlights, the recommended, and see like what kind of sort of non-topic dependent stuff might be out there. But I don't know. I've never found one that way. What about you?
No, definitely not. I wouldn't listen to a podcast like that. It's no disrespect to anyone who's running one, but it's just, if there is any curation there, it's certainly not the most efficient. We did run an audio drama. We called it a trailer part. This is going back more than 10 years ago now. I used to run, when we had the audio drama production show, we basically got trailers in from audio drama creators and kept them in this one place. So that was pretty cool. But then we were that niche anyway. Like it wasn't just, here's a cooking podcast, here's a wrestling podcast, it wouldn't be the most efficient way to seek out new content, would it? Yeah,
well, that leads into, I suppose, some of the better sharing strategies, I think, which is more around collaborations. So let's say you, the most basic version is there's somebody else in your space. Maybe they're a complementary podcast, maybe even competition, technically. But anyone that listens to your pod is going to listen to probably 2 or 3 or 4 or more other shows about the same subject. So it's barely competition. And you'll all have your own unique take on it as well. So just swap, just get in touch and say, I've got a trailer, 30-second trailer, 60-second trailer. Do you have one as well? I'll play yours on mine if you play mine on yours. And that can work really nicely. But you can get more creative too. Like that way that you're talking about there is really nice. As in, if you have a page on your website just with, here's 7 other podcasts that we recommend about, the creator economy or something similar, for example, then maybe you can convince other people that you're sharing to put it on their websites as well. And that can be not just a one episode shot, it'll be something that goes on for ages as well. Do you think what other ways do you know to get that trailer out there?
Well, I was just going to say, like, what are some of the tips or tools that you could think of for actually finding those other shows in your niche? Like, maybe you listened to a couple of them already and you would reach out to them. But if you just wanted a wee picture of, like, some other similar shows, how might you go about that?
Yeah, a few good tools out there, actually. I mean, it's just a standard search, of course. Like, just search your topic and podcast. It'll pop up a bunch. There's a tool called SparkToro, which I love for this kind of thing. So SparkToro, it is a paid tool, but you do get a free account, which gets you, I think, 5 searches a month. So you can do quite a bit with it, even on the free. And what it does is you can search for topics, and it shows you all of the websites, all of the YouTube channels, all of the podcasts, all of the newsletters that, the people that like that topic actually subscribe to. And you can even dig down, so you can find a podcast, like you can look up your own podcast on there, and you can see what other podcasts people tend to listen to if they listen to yours. Even more relevant, really, sometimes is actually finding some competitor podcasts and then seeing who listens to, or what else do people watch or listen to when they watch them as well. So that's a great way of getting in there and digging through and finding like dozens and dozens of other stuff that is related. Not just the competitors. Like generally you'll know quite a few competitors, you'll be able to find them easy enough, but it's the related ones. Like happens that, for example, people that listen to Podcraft might also listen to, let's say a bunch of creator economy stuff. So how to make a creator business, or maybe it's like microphone stuff, like they love audio gear, things like that. Or maybe there's some like relation that we've never even thought of, that it just happens that there's a big overlap, and therefore there's a really kind of easy space to get in there and try and get our show in front of them. So yeah, something like that can work really nicely.
Have you looked at the Raphonic graph? The related podcast
the
graph?
big web thing. Yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
have you
on
used
that
for it before.
Yeah, I'm just on that now, having a wee look at it. So I typed in Podcraft. So yeah, it's a really cool visual tool, and there's a lot of different genres. Like it spans off into, a lot of sort of business focused genres and beyond. But there's a wee cluster there of sort of podcast focused shows. I'm seeing Dave Jackson there. Libson's The Feed. We've got the Audacity to Podcast, Pod News. So a lot of shows in there. We're obviously aware of these shows and know the folks, but there's some shows in there I've never heard of. So if we were exploring this, that'd be a really good opportunity to look into them a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I've seen actually taking advantage of the recent last few years explosion in QR codes is that physical marketing, like stickers, cards, beer mats, as you've talked about in the past, like the fact that you can put a QR code on there and maybe that can direct straight towards the trailer. So somebody takes a photo on their phone and it goes straight to just a play button on their phone, essentially, that plays that trailer directly. It might come out the phone speakers. If they've got the headphones in, they might be able to listen to it directly. That'd be great. So yeah, that can be a nice way to do it.
Do you know when the first QR code was put out there?
When was that?
Guess.
I could say like I'd just say like realistically 2010s, like 2015 or 16, for example. But I bet you're going to tell me it was way before. yeah,
I would have said about that too. 1994. I don't even know how anyone was reading that QR code, but there you go.
Different kind of barcode at the time, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. But yeah, I mean, like if you can figure out those collaborations, I think that's one of the best ways. Like if you figure out sort of a sharing net, like even creating a kind of informal network almost of shows that are related. Like if you can find 5, 6, 7 different shows that have some kind of crossover in audience, and you all make an agreement to keep playing these 7 trailers that are for all of your shows over like 3, 5, 6 months, whatever it is, that can make such a difference to everyone, like grow all organically together. So if you can find those collaborations, that can be one of the best ways to use them, I think.
Yeah. And it's handy again if your hosting provider has dynamic ad tools. Like you could just have, 3 or 4 different trailers from different podcasts. And it's very easy when you're uploading your episode just to set those little markers at an appropriate time and play them that way. And like Colin's saying, if other shows are returning the favour, then you're all going to benefit from it. One more wee place that could have good opportunities for folks to do trailer swaps is our indie pod community. I was speaking to Lindsay just yesterday, and they're looking at, potentially before this episode's out, just creating a wee space in that community for trailer swaps for folks that are interested in doing a wee exchange like that. So yeah, the indie pod community is definitely worth checking out as well. Where could we find that, Colin?
You can get that over at indiepod.thepodcasthost.com. So that's INDIE pod.thepodcasthost.com. But we'll pop it in the show notes as well. What about a final one, Matthew, which is more around video? Like I mentioned, creating a video version for social. Would you create a proper video version for YouTube? Do you think that can work?
If I was doing a YouTube trailer, again, like a lot of the trailers I've made are kind of audio drama focused. So we got, I can't remember if it was the trailer itself or just a clip from Hostile Worlds. We got it animated, didn't we, by a freelancer?
That,
And it was really cool. Yeah. I think it was a clip from the show, but I think that is what I would do. I would get it animated. What about yourself?
Yeah, you can go the kind of full hog and actually pay somebody to do it properly. That might be, what was that, like in the hundreds of dollars?
Yeah, but not that much, like 150.
Really?
So it wasn't like outrageous.
Cool. Yeah, and there are tools now to, what do they create? So, I mean, like AI tools that can just create video from prompts are mental. So you do get, but they're definitely still not quite there. Like everyone has 7 fingers and, just weird things happen. But there are a couple of tools like Filmora, for example. So I've been using Filmora, which is a video editing tool a lot recently for some video episodes. And it's got a tool in there where you can put in an audio clip, so let's say a minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, whatever it might be, and it'll actually just create a slideshow of sorts from AI generated images and subtitles as well. So that actually comes across quite well because the pictures, they mostly have, you still get a couple of little weird ones that pop in there, but actually for the most part they've been pretty good and actually create like a nice little slideshow that goes behind the audio. So it's not as good as a custom made thing by any means, but more affordable, more easy to create, and still actually reasonably good quality.
Are there any common pitfalls that we should avoid with our podcast trailers?
Yeah, I suppose you have to be careful of, swearing and stuff like that at first, isn't it? Like even if your show's 18 rated or whatever, if you want it to be played in the most places, then you probably want to make sure your trailer is clean at least. What about you?
I was going to say that, like even the ASP trailer is clean, the 30-second trailer, because that would just it would limit the places it could get played. So yeah, that's
definitely not a montage based one then, because I don't think you can find 30 seconds of ASP that's clean, can you?
I think as well, just this is always relevant in podcasting, but information overload, like you've got 30 seconds, don't just try and pack it with like as much information as you can. So just speak faster. I speed it up, double speed it. But
you've got things like really specific stuff as well. So like overloading information it kind of leads into try and make sure that CTA is just one thing. Don't also say like find us on Facebook or search for us on blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. Like try and just have one thing, just to ask as well, because kind of leads into the overloading.
Yeah, I listen loads of different platforms. And I've heard 1 or 2 trailers over the years where they've literally asked the audience for something other than, check out the podcast and listen to it, like asking for a review, like review us on iTunes or like support us on Patreon. And you're like, that's not the best use of your 30 seconds, is it?
Yeah, definitely not. No, it's the hook. It's the hook. You want to hook them in. Like 28 seconds of it should be like why they should listen, and then the last 2 is go and listen over here. It's all about the hook. That's the valuable thing that goes in there. Yeah, one cool thing we can give you here as well is if you're thinking about creating a trailer, we have a planner. So we've got a podcast planner. We call it the Alitu Show Planner. It's related to Alitu, but it's linked from the podcast host site as well. And it's an AI tool that guides you through creating a plan for your show, including a script. So you can go through, you can kind of give it information about your show, and it'll pop out a script at the end that follows all of the good guidance and good guidelines we've given here. So we'll pop a link for that in the show notes. But equally, if you go over to thepodcasthost.com and look at any article, there's a link to it in the sidebar as well. So yeah, that's a great way to get a wee trailer. It just creates a script for you. Easy enough. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you want the full guide as well, the full article, you'll find that at thepodcasthost.com/trailer. So that gets into a lot of the stuff we've covered here and a wee bit more on top of that as well.
Yeah, perfect. All the advice. All right. So we mentioned the survey again. Please do go over and fill in our survey. Why should they do it, Matthew? Go on.
Because I'm going to listen to their trailer and they'll get me as a listener. What more could you want? If you fill the survey out, there's a wee bit, pop a link to your trailer in there as well. Look forward to having a wee listen.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, go over to thepodcasthost.com/survey. That's thepodcasthost.com/survey. Stand to win a $100 voucher. Currently, we have 11 people entered, so you've got a good chance of getting it there. And also, it just helps us make the show better for you. So that's the main purpose. So please do go over and do that. All right, Matthew, what that'll do is for this week, all trailed out.
Yeah, it sure will. Reversing the trailer into the... Have you ever reversed a trailer before? You have to turn the wheel, you have to turn the steering wheel the other way, like the opposite way.
There's few things in life I can claim to be very good at, Matthew, but reversing a trailer is actually one of them.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Aye, because you would have grown up having a wee shot of the old tractor, wouldn't you? So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, working in the golf course and everything, reversing all sorts of things around. And then I worked for an event management company for ages, where I was always towing quad bikes on trailers all over the place. And because everyone's terrified of reversing a trailer, because it is hard, it's quite difficult. I always got nominated to do it. So I guess you are as well from your golf course experience.
Yeah, I'm pretty handy on an old trailer. But yeah, nice. One of my very few skills, and a completely redundant skill for me these days, but
exactly. I've not towed a trailer in probably a decade and a half, maybe even 2. Cool. All right. Well, thank you out there for listening. I hope you got some great advice on creating a trailer for your show. I hope it helps you grow your audience. We'll speak to you next time on Podcraft. Talk to you then.